I am Stephanie, 30 years old, a marketing consultant, and, most importantly, a woman who dared to walk away from the golden cage my family had built for me. Launching my own business had been the boldest decision of my life. It came at a price, though: months of strained silence, icy phone calls, and the knowledge that in my family's eyes, I had become an outsider. Growing up in a wealthy Boston household wasn't just about privilege, it was about expectation. My father, Harold Matthews, turned Matthews Investment Group into one of the most respected firms in the city, and in doing so, he molded his family with the same sharp precision he used in business deals. Perfection wasn't optional, it was survival. My mother, Elaine, was the guardian of appearances. She orchestrated every dinner party, every gala, every charity luncheon as though the Matthews name were a brand that had to be curated at all times. Even in our private lives, she was relentless. "A Matthews never falters," she would repeat, her tone clipped, as though emotion were a disease she refused to let into the house. Audrey, my older sister, absorbed those lessons with ease. Harvard MBA, flawless reputation, unquestioning loyalty to the family firm, she became the golden standard against which I was always measured. I, however, had never been content with merely living inside the polished walls of my family's empire. My heart beat for creativity, for branding, for the art of telling a story that connected with people. My father never forgave me for it. "Marketing is the shallow end of business," he once sneered during a family dinner, wine glass in hand. "Real vision requires numbers, risk, strategy, not slogans." And yet, I carved out a place for myself. I worked harder than anyone, staying long nights, closing clients, and eventually earning the title of Director of Client Relations and Marketing. But it was never enough, not for him. 8 months ago, everything cracked. I stumbled across irregular client accounts while preparing a presentation, money moving in strange patterns, large sums shuffled without transparency. When I brought the files to my father, expecting him to appreciate my diligence, his reaction was nothing short of volcanic. "Stay out of it," he snapped, ripping the papers from my hands. "This is far beyond your comprehension. Stick to your pretty presentations and leave the real work to those who understand it." The weeks that followed confirmed what I already knew. I had struck a nerve. My access to files vanished overnight. Audrey was ushered into meetings I once led. Conversations with my father became curt, controlled, full of veiled warnings. Even Uncle William, once my quiet supporter within the firm, began to distance himself. Jennifer Adams, my best friend since college, had always been my anchor. She had been welcomed into my family as if she were one of their own. Sometimes I joked she was more Matthews than I'd ever been. When she joined the firm, it only seemed natural, but lately, even she seemed less like my ally and more like a silent observer, sitting closer to Audrey during meetings, whispering with my mother at dinners. I tried not to think too hard about it. The breaking point came with Berkshire Development. I had worked tirelessly to build a strategy that spoke directly to Thomas Berkshire's vision, and when he signed with us, I thought, for once, my father might be proud. Instead, suspicion clouded his face. "What strings did you pull?" he demanded. "What did you promise him to lure him in?" "I did my job," I replied, stunned. "That's what you trained me for." But my victory was never mine to claim. In my father's eyes, it was a threat, a rebellion. 2 weeks later, I resigned. I launched my own firm, Matthews Marketing Consultancy, fully aware of the war it would ignite. My mother stopped answering my calls. Audrey sent a blistering email accusing me of treachery. My father threatened lawsuits that even his lawyers dismissed as hollow. Only Emma, my cousin, remained in my corner, offering scraps of information during coffee meetups. "They're circling the wagons," she whispered once. "Everyone is tense. It's like something's about to blow." Still, even with all that, I never imagined they'd go this far. Thanksgiving was sacred in our family. My mother lived for it, the perfect turkey, the silver polished until it gleamed, the curated guest list that showcased our family's prominence. The Matthews Thanksgiving wasn't just a meal, it was a performance, an annual reminder of loyalty and legacy. So when I called my mother a week before, I thought, naively, that perhaps tradition might bridge the chasm between us. "The usual time, dear," she said coolly, 2 o'clock, "and please, Stephanie, wear something appropriate this year." Her tone was clipped, dismissive, but not unusual. I mistook it for another one of her digs, another reminder that in her eyes, I was never quite polished enough. But as I stood on the marble steps of our Beacon Hill brownstone, clutching a homemade pecan pie in trembling hands, and saw my parents' cold figures blocking the doorway. The truth landed like ice in my veins. "You are not invited," my father said flatly, his voice devoid of hesitation. Through the narrow gap behind them, I caught sight of the life I used to belong to, my sister Audrey, laughing at the head of the table, Uncle William pouring wine, Jennifer, my Jennifer, smiling as though she'd always been one of them and I had never existed. The sound of their laughter stung more than the rejection itself. And that was the moment I realized, I wasn't just being excluded, I was being erased. I deflected by emphasizing the confidentiality protocols, trying to steady my breathing as my eyes scanned the email. "Should we be worried?" one of the board members had written. My father's reply was chilling in its precision. "Maintain normal relations with Stephanie while we assess the situation. We need to know exactly what she suspects and who she has spoken with." That single sentence struck harder than any rejection at the front door of our Beacon Hill home. It confirmed what I had begun to fear. Jennifer hadn't been my friend for years, she had been my father's informant, embedded in my life like a parasite. The realization hit in waves. Jennifer, the one person I had trusted outside of the suffocating orbit of my family, had been a spy. I thought of the late-night calls where I poured my heart out about my doubts at the firm, the afternoons when she assured me I was doing the right thing by breaking away, the champagne toast when she told me she was proud of me for launching my own consultancy. All of it, every word, every smile, had been weaponized, relayed back to my father like intelligence in a covert war. The betrayal stung so sharply that I had to steady myself against my desk, but the email thread only grew darker. "Jennifer will take over Stephanie's client relationships," my father wrote months later. "Her loyalty has earned her this advancement." Loyalty, that word again, the Matthews family motto, carved not in stone but in expectation, pulsed like poison through the screen. Loyalty meant silence, loyalty meant complicity, and Jennifer had given it freely, at my expense. I forced myself to keep reading, though every fiber of my being wanted to slam the laptop shut and walk away. A folder labeled personal drew my attention. I hesitated before opening it, but curiosity won over dread. Inside were screenshots, harmless at first glance, social media photos, candid shots at galas, charity luncheons, and ski weekends, but as I flipped through them, a pattern emerged. Audrey and Jennifer, always side by side, always leaning into each other with a closeness that was impossible to miss once you were looking for it. The final photo stole the air from my lungs. Taken inside my father's private lake house, it showed Jennifer and Audrey in an embrace too intimate to dismiss as friendly, their faces softened in affection, their posture careless, unaware of being watched. I slammed the laptop shut, nausea rising in my throat. My sister and my best friend, together, in secret, while Jennifer pretended to be my confidant. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a hollowing out of my entire past. Every shared memory now looked staged, every laugh rehearsed, every promise poisoned. My phone rang, jolting me. Michael's name flashed across the screen. "I couldn't wait until tomorrow," he said, his tone clipped with urgency. "I started looking into Matthew's investment group after your call, Stephanie. There are serious red flags, particularly in their offshore accounts. The activity suggests systematic fraud going back at least 5 years." My throat tightened. "I know," I whispered. "I'm staring at evidence right now, but there's more. Yesterday, they held an emergency board meeting. Do you know what that might have been about?" I heard the rapid clicking of Michael's keyboard. "Yes, there was unusual movement. Your father transferred significant ownership shares of the firm to your sister, and to someone named Jennifer Adams. Does that ring a bell?" A bitter laugh escaped me. "She's my former best friend, and apparently my father's newest protégé." Michael hesitated. "Stephanie, there's something else. A trust fund registered in your name shows substantial withdrawals. These require dual authorization." I froze. "My trust fund? The one my grandparents established? That money isn't supposed to be touched until I turn 35. No one can access it without my signature." "Someone already has," Michael replied gravely. "We're looking at potential fraud or identity theft. Stephanie, I need to ask, are you prepared to submit this evidence to the SEC and federal authorities? Doing so will almost certainly implicate your father, your sister, possibly your mother, too. Once you take this step, there's no going back." The weight of his words settled over me like lead. Memories collided in my mind, my father steadying my bike when I was 7, his laughter echoing down the driveway, Audrey holding my hand on our first day of school, promising me everything would be okay. My mother sitting beside my bed during fevers, humming softly in the dark. They weren't just symbols of corruption, they were my family, blood of my blood, and yet, they were the same people who had shut the door in my face hours ago, who had stolen my clients, my trust, even my inheritance. They had turned my closest friend into a weapon against me. I felt the tears sting, but I didn't let them fall. I thought of the investors, ordinary people, who had placed their life savings in my father's hands, unaware it was built on deception. I thought of myself, standing on those marble steps with a pecan pie, like a fool still clinging to tradition. Yes, I said finally, my voice low but resolute, I'll submit everything, but I need to make digital copies first, backups, encrypted. If they catch wind of this, evidence will vanish. Good, Michael said, secure it all. Once this breaks, they'll stop at nothing to protect themselves. For the next hour, I worked methodically, scanning every document, every email, every photo. I built folders by date and category, layering them with annotations that tied the story together into an airtight case. With each file saved, my resolve hardened. Finally, I sat at my desk, the first batch of evidence loaded into an email draft addressed to Michael. My finger hovered over the send button. This was the precipice. Once I crossed it, the Matthews empire would begin to crumble, and there would be no undoing it. I closed my eyes and saw my family as they had once been, my father's proud smile, my mother's gentle hands, Audrey's laughter that used to echo alongside mine. But then I remembered the cold slam of the door, the hidden photographs, the stolen trust fund, and the laughter of those who had erased me. I pressed send. And just like that, war began.